Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alejandro Kikuchi from Workana from home. The previous sessions like this I've been doing from the office, but now I'm home. We are not really using our offices much, trying to keep everybody safe. And those kinds of things are precisely what brings us here today. How do we keep growing on our businesses? And for example, how can our marketing strategies change or adapt with this new normal we've been living for quite some time now with a pandemic in which, for example, we are forced to work from home as I'm doing now. The COVID-19 pandemic is bringing about unprecedented changes worldwide, of course, and now more than ever, it's crucial for businesses to recalibrate. In that regard, Workana is working closely with companies, helping them reliably hire and work with remote talent, be it full-timers or on demand. So in our efforts to support companies in this journey, we are hosting these sessions in which industry leaders share their insights on the best ways to tackle this new normal. So far, we've had great conversations with a rich variety of businesses. Huge corporations such as Petronas, Reckitt Benckiser, and Google, as well as tech startups such as Fave, Naluri, or Curlec, just to name a few examples. So today, our guest is Jan. He's the founder of Open Minds, a company specializing in marketing technology. Let me add him to the stream. All right. Hey, Jan. Hello.
Hi, hey Kiku, morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good. Crazy times, but doing well.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, crazy times indeed. So, first of all, would you mind introducing yourself and your company? What is it that you guys do?
Sure. Once again, my name is Jen. I'm the founder of Open Minds. We are a marketing technology consultancy firm based in Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. For the past 8 years, we've been helping brands within the region, really trying to help them in areas like data analytics, helping them areas in lead generation, helping them create very strong funnel strategies, not just within the country, but to also help them to expand their scope beyond with the help of technology. Within the recent year, in fact, through these crazy times, we have also managed to launch a side venture of ourselves called Open Academy. It's an app that's launched within the App Store, really helping to upskill some of these professionals or entrepreneurs or even students that are interested in marketing, branding, leadership, and more.
Well, that's great. So, with this app, you could potentially learn about these things you're mentioning, like data analytics, branding.
That's exactly right. And I think the cool thing about this app is that the content is all very bite-sized. It's in a format that we already love. If you know Instagram stories, the ephemeral kind of a content, that's exactly how the content is being produced. So you can really pick up some of these business insights really quickly, just under minutes. Don't need your laptop. 20-minute session there. We're doing away with all of those.
All right. Well, that's great. We'll make sure to discuss it again in a minute. I'll definitely want to dive into that. But first, so you're operating in Malaysia, which is where both of us are right now. But also, you mentioned Singapore and Hong Kong. That's interesting because, of course, besides the fact that it's a team distributed in different locations, the pandemic hit differently and with at different rates, right, in Hong Kong and in Singapore than in Malaysia. Not necessarily better or worse, but definitely differently. Would you mind sharing a bit about what's your team like and how you've been dealing with the pandemic?
Sure. One of the good things that for us especially is that on an operational level, Open Minds have always been operating on a 3 days in office, 2 days out of office model anyway. So when the
Right.
pandemic first hit us, of course it was a shocker, but operationally we were ready. Things were already on the cloud. We did not need to depend on desktops that have to be clocked in within the office. The task management was on the cloud. We were using Slack, we were using Asana. So most of the communications and work, it's already done remotely anyway. And team members are already very comfortable working from cafes, libraries, wherever they feel comfortable, really, as long they get the job done. So operationally, we are very fortunate that we did not need to go through the huge learning curve of, oh, should I use Zoom? Should I use Google Meets? Should I use what are the tools out there? We were already very familiar with that. But on a business level, it's rather interesting because although we operate from 3 countries, our clients are quite global in a sense. I remember in the early days of the pandemic, when it first hit China and when we were still called the Wuhan virus, me and my partners, we were saying that, hey, it's okay, it's just China. Yes, we have some accounts in China, but don't worry, it's all fine.
We'll be
And then,
fine.
yeah, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And then we thought, no worries, we have our other accounts in Europe. It's totally okay. And guess what? Within March, within April, Europe starting bursting out, right? Germany, France, Italy at one point of time, we were like, okay. It's in China, it's in Europe, it's not Southeast Asia, right? We still have presence in Hong Kong, we have presence in Singapore. It will be fine. And guess what? It all exploded to the extent that you have mentioned just now. So business-wise, I think it's definitely affected us. But in the first 3 months especially, I think there was a huge learning curve, not so much on just our end, but also us in engaging our customers to actually convince them that, hey, look, while the world is slowing down and putting a halt to a lot of all this marketing efforts or even thinking of investing further into technology, there's certain importance in making sure you do the groundwork now, you build the foundation in this time. And we spent a lot of time not just educating clients, but also trying to assure our team members that the company is all right. There's a lot of human resource related tasks that came up. At the same time, also allocating enough time to do the innovation bit, which was the app that we launched that we spoke about earlier.
All right. Yeah, that's great. It's very interesting the fact that you were already working 3 days in office and 2 days already remote from home or wherever. But still, as you just mentioned, you still needed to, once this hit, to start taking care of lots of human resources things, right? Because of course you need to worry about the team, make sure they are okay in so many different senses, basically. And as you were mentioning, your clients were hit, of course, because particularly when this started, right? Nobody knew what was going on, so
Exactly.
everybody came to a halt. And all right, let's figure out what's this like. But then, how would you say that now? Still in the middle of the pandemic, of course, but many months have gone by. And considering the particular line of business you operate in with marketing technology, are you seeing, growth? Are you seeing an uptick in terms of usage of the tools you promote, you work on, your clients?
Comparing to how when the pandemic first started, there is definitely improvement. I think one thing for sure is not just consumers, but the brands and businesses that we consult have kind of come to terms with the pandemic. I think all of us know that it's kind of here to stay. I mean, even if you're in denial, we are in it for most parts of 2020, most of 2020 already. So you shouldn't be in denial. So most brands have accepted the fact. Some brands have also used this opportunity to adapt to the pandemic, either spin out new services, new products, which has helped them or helped them stay afloat. Some of them are slowly seeing that, hey, they can't stay silent, because if they do, customers go to other competitors, people stop buying and they'll be forgotten. So with all this realization kicking in, some brands have already started moving into the game again. So they are starting to invest again, they're starting to have conversations again. At the very least, they're looking towards upskilling their management team or their leadership team to say, hey, look, these are the areas we need to invest in. We need to start looking at our data. We need to start looking at what kind of technologies are we using, and is it helping within this pandemic, or should we upgrade? Should we change? Should we integrate them? Should we approach consumers differently? What are consumers' behavior like? And all these considerations are coming in right now, and that's where we come in through Open Minds. Right? So I think with that said, there is definitely an uptick. It's still very far away from our projection and what we were expecting to do this year, but definitely very different compared to what we were experiencing in March.
Right, right, right. All right, all right. So, first of all, would you mind sharing with us the name of the app again for upskilling?
Oh, it's called the Open Academy app.
Open Academy. Perfect. And
Yeah,
this is available on the
both
usual
App Store. Yes, correct.
stores.
The
All right,
Google
perfect.
Play and
Open
the Apple App
Academy.
Store.
So you're tapping into something that's I think it can be very interesting to discuss, which is on one hand, companies understanding the need to upskill their management, for example, with
Mhm.
data analytics, as you mentioned, just to name one example, and but that's also related, I'm sure, to how well a shift and because of that budget allocation, for example, between offline traditional marketing
Mhm.
and the digital marketing. What's your take on that? What kind of shift have you seen because of the pandemic happen?
Well, I think the most obvious shift, definitely that we feel it right now, is the shift of budget, right? I think a lot of companies have shifted majority of the budget or what's left of their budget towards the digital side of things, and it's very much understandable because if you talk about offline marketing, it's very limited right now with travel restrictions, with social distancing, with crowd control orders. You can't really expect a billboard or flyers or events to draw crowds anymore. So your regular trade shows, your regular networking events, your regular giving sampling on the streets, all cannot function.
Hmm.
And it's not possible and it's not ideal for brands to even activate some things like that. It's against the law in some of the countries, right? So a lot of these budgets have then shifted to digital, but it's not as simple as we think it is. Because in the early days of this pandemic, we actually saw that a lot of clients thought that, hey, it's just quite simple, right? Besides spending on flyers, right now I just spend the same money, put it to Facebook, click the boost button, and it runs. And some did that and they realized that, hey, there's a lot more complexity to it. I don't really understand how the consumer behavior is like. I don't really know what this targeting interest is that. I don't really know to build this whole digital funnel. And that's where the realization of education eventually came in. So there was a period where they were trying to play the defensive game and then they slowly open up to start experimenting and they start failing. And then right now I say, okay, I think now things are about to get real. Time to get ourselves educated, time to speak to people. And that is the period of time that we're in right now. I think that also testifies to the fact of the number of webinars or number of podcasts being launched. I mean, I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed. Every other day, I have a friend launching a podcast, somebody doing
Right.
some sort of a live video, somebody's sharing about something. And I think it's quite a nice season in that sense because resources are really abundant. Information is everywhere. And people are also quite likely to extend help within this period of time, especially within the local businesses and local communities.
Right, right, right. That's that's a great point of view because it's definitely not the same. Having just a billboard or a trade show, I'm not saying it's better or worse or
Mm-hmm.
more or less complex, but it's quite different. With digital, you have such an amount of data, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the kind of which I believe it's a good thing, of course. It's the kind of audience you're exposing your brand to, engagement, and because of that, if you don't leverage on that data, you're missing out. One, and
Exactly. But you know what's even more interesting is that apart from the fact of leveraging on data and trying to navigate through the complexity on the technicality of digital marketing, it's actually a shift of mindset. It's very interesting because when you speak to somebody that's already investing into traditional marketing, they don't tend to question a very tangible ROI. They won't ask you things like how
right,
many people are actually seeing, and because of that billboard, I actually walk into a store. Rarely this is being questioned. It's all just about impressions. It's all just about brand visibility. But when they start investing like just $1,000 into Facebook, and they'll be like, "Is anybody seeing? How many people are clicking to it? Is it converting to sales?" And become very critical when it comes to digital marketing. And that I think is also one of the breakthroughs that companies are slowly getting accustomed to say, okay, it's not just all about conversions, although it's important, but there are certain aspects of marketing that we also need to understand that's actually parallel to offline marketing.
right. It's funny, $1,000 on Facebook might yield better results than a 50,000 billboard, right?
There you
Because
go.
billboard, people don't pay any attention to it, or it's just 1 second, or it's the wrong audience.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're, a tiny fraction of that budget, you use it right, you use it properly on digital, and then you make sure you're reaching the right audience, tapping many times, if needed. But of course, the billboard, it satisfies some sort of also ego part of people, right? You see
I
it
think
there,
that
you
is
see your
very
logo,
true.
big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is very, very true. In fact, I do have some clients that also expect digital marketing to function in that way. They want to see their ads everywhere. So, in fact, I was just within this conversation with my team members just last week, and they're telling me there was this client that is getting a little bit anxious because he's Googling himself and he's trying
Yeah.
to see his ads, but his ads is not appearing to him, right? And he wants the ad to appear to him to feel that the ad is working, right? But it is funny because very simply, he's not his own target audience,
Right, right,
right? We
right.
are targeting the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, and he's definitely not part of the target audience, but he's expecting to see the ads because that gives him some sort of emotional confirmation to say, look, it's there.
I'm
People are
there.
seeing exactly. I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and it's, as you were saying, that's part of the mindset that needs to change. I mean, reaching the right audience was always a part of marketing. But it's like as you were saying, targeting Gen Z, but then wanting to see the ad in Wall Street Journal. No, you won't see it there. You'll see it in the channels or Facebook pages or TikTok influencers or
Exactly.
whatever that
Yeah.
audience follows. And if you're not part of the audience, yeah, no, you won't see it. And that's where you also need to, at some point, trust the professionals handling the campaigns and the stats given by the platforms, right? If
Mm-hmm.
Facebook says, you got 5,000 impressions, well, you need to trust them. I mean, you can't, because otherwise, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same as billboards, right? I mean, if you subscribe to a billboard, you pay $50,000. They tell you that, look, there's about 100,000 cars that pass by every day. You have to trust those numbers. Is there
Yeah,
really 100,000 cars? Is there less? Is there more? You don't know, right? So
yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
the same mindset has to be applied across marketing in general.
Definitely. What it's funny. What we are finding is that, just as you're saying, right, digital marketing gets challenged with some questions that traditional market never gets.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing the same, for example, with the kind of remote employment we provide, right? We have maybe a potential client asking us, well, what if the guy you give me works for me 8 months and then leaves for another job? And our response is, well, it's the same risk as with a regular employee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hire someone and 8 months later, for some reason, they leave. In a sense, I mean, I get why the concern is there, but in a sense, it's the same kind of concern you should have with the way you've been operating traditionally, be it hiring, marketing, these kinds of things. But because it's new, many questions open up, even though there are questions that are also unanswered in the traditional ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, interesting. Um, and the other thing you mentioned, with which is worth exploring, is of course upscaling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you were saying that you're seeing companies tell their managers, "Hey, you need to upskill and be able to deal with this." So, would you say, is there any particular one or set of practices that you believe marketing managers and directors should be more savvy with?
Oh, yes. I think we have spoken to quite a wide spectrum of managers or even business owners when it comes to the topic of upskilling, but particularly to the newer ones, companies that have never really invested into this whole area of digital marketing before. You'll be very surprised to see that although we live in a time where the usage of Facebook is so common, everybody knows Instagram, everybody kind of heard of TikTok. But when it comes to using it from a brand or business perspective, there's a huge question mark. There are lost in terms of even the type of content they should be publishing, the type of platforms that they should be on, what are the different types of mediums that's made available to them, even in terms of ad buying. So all the way from strategy to content to publishing to managing this content to building a community around it, there's a huge question mark. They're very good at it as consumers. In fact, they can comment and criticize many other brands, but when it comes down to them doing it, there's a huge missing link. So that's one end of the chain where they really need help in terms of really just the basic understanding of what digital marketing really is. There's actually three groups of people, right? So that's the first group. The second group of people still believes that this whole area is still pretty much a trend. They're still very hesitant in going full force into it. They know people are on it, but they don't see how their business can continuously do social or continuously do digital. They see this as a passing thing where eventually people will still come back to us physically. So hence they're a bit hesitant over there. Now, the third group of people are people that have already been doing digital. But even so, because of the change in certain consumers' behaviors, some of the things that they used to do aren't working anymore. Right. And then that is also causing quite a bit of headache because they're saying, hey, we're buying ads the same way for the past 5 years. It's always worked. This time it's not. We're experiencing a decline of views, decline of engagement, declines of conversions, and they are left within a situation to fight for themselves. At the same time, these are also the people that have a wealth of customer databases, which are also scratching their head to say, how can we make use of this bunch of people? So CRM is also quite a big topic within this season because a lot of businesses have already been collecting a lot of data. You probably just don't know it. For example, your name cards, your email addresses, your Facebook profile, all this that you have, the people that you follow, the blogs that you read. There's a lot of places that you could reach out on, but companies are not tapping to them. And that's why the common topics are always surrounding what can I do with data? How far can I stretch my CRM within this season? How do I better content marketing? How can I increase visibility? These are the common questions we're being asked in this season.
That's I think those questions make a ton of sense, and it's great that you are getting those questions because it means a desire to grow and make the most of all of this, of course. But it's great also that not only the third group you mentioned, the group that was already doing digital, might also be scratching their heads. Maybe it's because they haven't properly leveraged on their data yet. Maybe it's because how people use these tools changed because of the pandemic, right? I mean, all of the social media and whatnot started being used far more. And even without all of that, these are platforms that are constantly evolving. New features, new segmentation, new targeting methodologies. So upskilling or reskilling, or constantly being up to date if you're working with digital is crucial, at the very least, because the platforms themselves change. But on top of that, the audiences change, and most likely your own business changes and evolves with time.
Yep.
So I like this concept you mentioned about the three groups, right? And with different levels of involvement with digital. Now, what would you say? You mentioned a little bit of this. What would you say is the biggest challenge with all of this? I would guess with the first group, the biggest challenge lies within changing the actual mindset,
and also changing the way they do things. Actually, yeah. Yeah, because
what do you mean the way in what capacity?
Yeah, because the first group are the people, they are probably the traditionalists, right? They've been doing things perhaps for the past decade or two, and they're so ingrained in how business is being run or marketing is being done or how advertising is being done. And when they are forced into this corner where right now I can't meet my clients face to face, I can't sell to them face to face, my agents or my team members, my sales team are not equipped digitally to use this. I have no way to track their sales. I have no way to make sure my message is being sent synonymously out to the market. When all these questions come in, when they're forced to take a look at digital, that's where they realize the gap is, because whatever the method they use to communicate is very different when it goes digital. For it's as simple as something like how you design flyers. What you put on a flyer may not be appealing or attractive when it's put to a visual post on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. How
Right,
you do
right.
videos is different because the consumers consume videos so differently right now. It's not just about vertical or horizontal, which more people consume vertical based videos right now. Some people find that subtitles are extremely important because there's a rise of people watching silent videos, right? They read subtitles without listening to the sound. And people don't want to sit down and consume a content that's an hour long of a webinar, just you talking without interaction and just blah, 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 watching a corporate video,
A
right? People's
monologue.
attention
Yeah,
span, yeah, it's really shortening, and people want to see the now, they want to see the more human aspect of things. And that's the biggest area the first group of customers or brands can't realize or can't see, or they're struggling to see. With the second group of people, it's really just like you said just now, a shift of mindset. They need to see that whatever they're doing right now is not so much about adapting to trends or doing what is best at this particular season, but they need to start seeing that this new thing, or to them it's new, this whole digital marketing, this whole marketing technology industry is something that needs to be integrated into part of their work. It may mean that it's a change of portfolios or the job descriptions of some of their employees or management. It may mean that there's a change of messaging or how certain things should be delivered and could be delivered into the hands of their consumers. It could mean that there needs to be new ways to make themselves more discoverable online. I mean, just think about the past 8 months in this pandemic, right? Whether it's you wanting to order something from home, whether you researching on the credibility of the company, like it or not, I think 99% of us use search engines. And if
of
your
course.
company is not on a search engine, if I'm going to search your company and you're not coming up, there's no reviews, there's nobody talking about you, you're as good as non-existent,
Right.
despite you being 100-year-old company. Right? So companies need to get over this fact to say that, okay, we just need to last through the vaccine is being distributed. Come on, let's be realistic, right? Even
Three
with
more
the
months,
vaccine,
6 more months, and no,
yeah,
this
3 more
is
months, 6 more months, and it won't drop on every citizen on planet Earth. There needs to be distributed. There needs to be different countries have different stock amount. Will we run out of stock? Nobody knows, right? So there's so many uncertainties, and this will stick. Plus, it's very clear with the years moving forward, tech will continuously be an integral role in businesses. By adopting it right now, it's the best time because everybody's jumping onto it. If you are behind it right now, you've imagined 5 years later, 10 years later, and then you're going to pick up again. That's going to be a lot more challenging than where we are right now.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We and going back to, for example, what you mentioned about the CRMs and what you were just saying about how do we reach our clients. There's many of these technologies or tools are nowadays so easy to use and integrate with. Maybe 10
Mm-hmm.
years ago, you wanted to integrate a new digital payment system and whatnot. It was a headache. You needed to hire developers and whatnot. Nowadays, you have services with which you subscribe, you pay a monthly fee, and all of a sudden you can charge a monthly recurring subscription. Or
Exactly. Yeah.
and not only you have a new ability like charging a recurring monthly subscription, all of a sudden you start having data. How many new people are we bringing in every week? How many people are dropping? What's are the demographics? I don't know. And then you can leverage on that. So, for example, you were saying that video uh, has many challenges, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just vertical or horizontal, but also the need for subtitles because of the rise in people watching videos silently, maybe at night with their partner sleeping next to them or children, right? Which makes a lot of sense. And also, I think there's also one aspect brands coming more from traditional mediums tend to ignore about digital, is that in digital, the audience also has a voice. The consumers,
Exactly.
they can leave a comment on your YouTube videos, they can comment and like or not your Facebook posts,
Mm-hmm.
and or they and you need to have the capacity to hear them out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, Backlash. But back 20 years ago, you would run some ad on TV, and if it didn't sit well with the audience, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe some. I mean, it's not really. But now the backlash can be immediate. You can have backlash the very day you publish it or tweet it or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and it can blow out of proportions. That's another aspect where having the right tools and integrations and data helps, because that can be for damage mitigation, but also for riding a trend as soon as you see it, if
Mm-hmm.
that happens.
But that is very, very true. And I think the fear that you mentioned is very evident even in a lot of businesses today. In fact, that is probably one of the biggest barrier of entry. Everybody's already start thinking about what about the backlash. But the thing about
Mm.
backlash is that you need to be big enough to receive a backlash.
Backlash,
That,
yeah.
yeah, that's fact, right? I mean, if you are new to Facebook, for example, you're going to start a Facebook page today and you're going to have an audience of 1,000 people. I mean, or 100 people or 10,000 people for that matter. The amount of backlash you're going to receive or the possibility for that to happen won't be as crippling as you think it is, right? Unless you are riding on a community of very passionate supporters and customers following you. You are talking about hundreds and thousands of millions of followers that's actively engaging with you, and then you post something wrong. Yes, the potential for backlash would be there. That's why even if you look at the news that's going around, right, of different companies having these social media failures, don't do these things. You look at them, they're either celebrities,
Right.
huge multinational companies that have a lot of stake, communities, they are very, very active, like the gaming community with a lot of passionate gamers that's participating. And these are the people that would definitely engage. But if you're going to this new, I would always tell clients, hey, look, don't worry about backlash. Worry about building your presence, building your community, because that's what's important. Without that, I can
In
guarantee you there's zero backlash. There's
Yeah,
nothing can
right.
possibly happen.
Backlash, in a sense, backlash means there's people who cares, and
Exactly.
that's, I mean, to a certain extent, and from a certain point of view, backlash, if you're if we are talking about a small brand, backlash might even be something to aspire to, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, hopefully someday we mess something up with our social media and we have a base of followers strong enough to care,
Mm-hmm.
and we get some backlash. That means you are somebody, right? Yeah, but as you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, if your brand is too small, the risk for backlash is, yeah, it's
Yeah,
simply not there.
it's not almost non-existent, exactly. And backlashes could be turned into a positive situation as well. I mean, if you handle the backlash well, that would become a very positive thing that you're doing for your brand, and it's a good PR opportunity as well. And if you can actually reach a stage of backlash, which I set out earlier, that means that you have a strong community. You may also see how your positive community is able to respond to the backlash on your behalf. So you need
Right,
to know
right,
that you
right.
are not alone in this whole thing. Like you said,
And
you use the word interactivity, right? And I think that's very important.
the worst you can do is ignore the interactivity factor in all of
Mm-hmm.
this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think if you
right.
start ignoring, that's where you can expect backlash to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, great, good stuff. So would you be able to define a few, like a handful, maybe three
Mm-hmm.
trends or changes, methodologies you are seeing in this, in these times regarding marketing technology?
Oh, sure. I think there are many actually. To limit it to three would be a bigger challenge, but I understand a top three that comes to mind. The thing about the trends moving forward is quite interesting because there are, like I mentioned right in the beginning of this session, a lot of existing go-to marketing strategies have really not been working out. B2B email lists are breaking down, push for sales and remarketing isn't as straightforward as before. Customers are also not responding the same they would. So what is happening right now and what will happen in the future? In the past 8 to 10 months, we spot a few consistencies that we can actually start to classify for as a trend. right? So the first thing is that we see that there's a rising demand of what we call personification, which means brands to become more human, to take a more personable approach in all the content they're distributing. So some people like to ask, hey Jen, what do you mean by content being more human? Very simple. Drop your PR language, drop
Right.
your jargons,
Right.
drop being referring to yourself as a third person, trying to stick a neutral ground, and add some emotion and personality behind your brand. Speak as though someone is coming to you and say, hey Jen, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Speak in a conversational language. We talk about interactivity. There's a huge demand for this right now because people want to see brands being human as well. The second rise of a trend that we see is actually a focus towards or drive towards social causes. Now, prior to the pandemic, right, the social causes has always been environmental, maybe the pets and domestic violence and things like that. But through this pandemic season, there is seem to be a demand for brands or a pressure on brands to actually take notice and take action on specific social causes. I think one thing that exploded this year very widely, I think a lot of us have heard of about it, is the whole Black Lives Matter campaign.
Of
After
course.
that, there were so many other aspects coming, racial equality, career, what's happening within the corporate scene, the who climbs and all of that kind of things, racism and all that. All these topics are what consumers are very passionate about right now. And in fact, there was a recent survey that was done that consumers today are expecting, 80% of consumers today are expecting brands to take proper action responding to some of these social causes. And you know what they said? For brands that don't, they will lose the support of the consumers.
Mm,
It's scary.
right.
It's never been like that before. But there's so many psychological factors this year that contributed to that, and therefore increasing the drive or sensitivity for brands towards causes. Now, the third one is a combination of two things. It's actually the combination of social commerce that we are already masters of by now, plus the element of entertainment. So
Uh-huh.
moving forward, we are seeing the rise of how entertainment and social commerce will blend together as one very strong marketing angle that brands should start taking on for very simple reasons. Number one, social commerce has always been around. In fact, it's been around since 1997. Many people don't know that. I will leave that for a separate session, but it's been around. But recently, of course, it became very big because of social media, because of the pandemic. We're all at home, we're watching live streams, we are doing this online shopping thing, we're on marketplaces, Lazada, Shopee, you name it, you know it. And why this is also increasing is because right now this is also attracting a big bunch of consumers that have never shopped before to now start shopping. They are right now more in tune to it, they're addicted to it, like my parents. They're avid Lazada and Shopee shoppers. Every day there's a new package coming home. It's like, what? They can start a store on their own. But
That's
on the
that's a
other,
classic. I'm sorry to
yeah,
cut you off. Brief comment. That's a classic phrase we've been seeing rise this year. Like, whoa, now even my mom is buying online, right? Like,
exactly. Right.
yeah,
And it's funny because before this, they were like, oh, I shouldn't tie my credit card. It's so sensitive. What if this? What if that? And right now it's like, poop, 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 come. You know,
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
keep buying. And on the other hand, when we talk about the entertainment blend part, right? Let's face it, we are spending also a lot more attention on entertainment these days. We may or may not know it, right? So of course, the more common ones, we always talk about how Netflix is on the rise right now. We are subscribing to more entertainment outlets, Disney Plus, and wherever you are, I'm sure you have a service you're subscribing to. Maybe you have not paid for Spotify because you didn't used to listen to music so often and you could bear with the ads. And right now, to listen to it all day, you couldn't. So you're subscribing to Spotify now. All these things, or subscribing to online games and whatever else. And all the way to even the subtle entertainment that we're receiving through our social media apps. How Facebook is prioritizing videos. And don't tell me any of the listeners here are not browsing more videos today. We are. Whether it's on TikTok, where an average user spends an hour on TikTok daily. That's insane considering TikTok's content is only 15 to 30 seconds. And
Right,
then
right. That's a lot of TikTok videos.
that's a lot of TikTok videos. And then you go on Instagram. Instagram reported a 16 times, imagine that, 16 times increase of engagement on stories within this season.
Right.
Facebook has 102% increase of people using or interacting on Facebook. We seek out entertainment. And it's no more a secret where now consumers like that and brands are starting to blend commerce elements into entertainment.
Into
We may
entertainment.
think that this is very far away, but do you know that in Korea and China, companies are already doing it? Talk shows like this, right? So imagine both of us are talking right now, and then somehow there's a shopping cart button that pops up that could buy off your earphones there and then in this conversation
Right,
without doing
right, right,
anything else, right? So
right.
it's entertaining, there's educational value, at the same time you can shop. This is the third trend that we're seeing moving forward in the months to come.
All right. Wow, interesting. So let me sum up. Number three trends you're seeing throughout this season, Rise.
Mm-hmm.
Brands as humans, dropping the PR corporate language, warming up, talking, speaking like an actual human being. Like if the companies were run by people, which of course they are, so it makes sense to be more relatable, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have that um, interactivity we were discussing. Number two, social causes. Make sure you participate, engage the community regarding that. And number three, this blend of social commerce and entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
which combines. And what's interesting about all of this is that it can be applied to any medium, any social network, and
Exactly.
to any social network or any e-commerce marketplace. I mean, it applies to everything, right? Whether you are tweeting, you're posting to your LinkedIn company page, you're publishing your product in Lazada, any of those cases, these, because if you are supporting, for example, Black Lives Matters, you can turn your logo black, maybe
Mm-hmm.
for a period of time, and that logo, of course, shows up everywhere. So,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, something as simple as that can can be already sending a message. So yeah, I think that these are very valuable. I mean, actionable, regardless of the kind of brand you're working with, the kind of product, whether it's B2B, B2C, regardless of the channels or mediums you're using, these trends make a ton of sense.
Indeed. Yep.
All right, great. That's great advice, and we can close on that. I think that's a great insights to close with. So thank you very much for your time. I think this was very informative. It's I come from a marketing background. I always love discussing the challenges when jumping from offline traditional marketing to digital mediums, and these trends you just shared. I think they're very, very insightful. So thank you very much. Stay
Thank
safe,
you.
please, and
You too.
we'll keep in touch.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye. Take care.